if you aren't aware, we have a new Learnosity Assessment platform that we have added to our eAlpha domain, and it's available for teachers to use. And we're going to go through some introductory information on it today. We're also going to have me do a demonstration on how to log in as a teacher and to assign a test. And then I'm going to log in as the student to take the test. And then I'm going to log back in as the teacher to view the report. And then we're going to have you do the same. So at the end, we'll leave time in case you want to practice with your own student and teacher logins. And of course, you can take those student and teacher logins with you and practice tomorrow if that's easier. If you do not have a student or teacher login, it might mean that you'll need to request one in the chat, and then Beverly will set you up with that. If you pre-registered, you should have received one from your meeting invitation. And we will have time for question and answer at the end. And of course, if you have questions and want to add them to the chat, that's fine as well. So why did we choose Lurnosity? If you could please mute as you join the meeting, that would be really helpful. Thanks. Lurnosity is an online assessment tool. It's used by dozens of companies, including Alpha Publishing, and many, many companies around the world. And I've listed a few of the stats of how many 67 million questions are authored. Many companies are using this tool. I've used it for development for probably about 10 years now, and it's an amazing assessment tool. We have, at Alpha Publishing, we have fully integrated Lurnosity into our eAlpha platform. And those of you who are teachers who use our eAlpha platform, you're familiar with our online resources. But just in case you're not, we do have interactive student resources. We have ancillaries, videos, flashcards. One of our newest additions is simulations. And then we also have a complement of teacher resources. And now we have a full suite of assessments. Alpha assessments powered by Lurnosity are aligned to Common Core ELA standards, Common Core mathematics standards, and also NGSS science content in our program. So they're fully aligned to Alpha reading, Alpha literature, Alpha science, and Alpha math. With Alpha assessments, you'll have innovative question types, engaging items, and fully integrated teacher resources. So we're excited to bring you this new product. So let's discuss a little bit of vocabulary, because Lurnosity has some specific terms that they use to describe the kind of experience that you will have as a teacher and your students will have. So Alpha assessments powered by Lurnosity are called activities because they have dual use. These are fully aligned to our program, and they're in addition to what we already have as ExamView Pro assessments. If you're familiar with our eAlpha platform, we have the ExamView Pro test generator. We have tools that you can download. You can build your own tests. There are some pre-built tests there, but they're not aligned to our content, although they still are very useful. But we have taken an extra step to align all of our Alpha content on this Lurnosity platform. So activities can be used as assessments or as practice, depending on the teacher preference. And we have over 2,200 activities ready to go. And we also have over 18,000 items ready. So activities are the same as assessments, and activities are composed of items, and each item is a single question. And we have over 18,000 items ready. So there are different types of assessments that we have, or activities, in our platform. We offer formative assessments, and those are assessments that monitor student learning. They provide feedback to teachers and students. You'll see that you can, on the teacher side, view what a student has completed to figure out what they do and don't know and what you might need to go back to seek to improve with that student. So these can be assigned in a way that you can collect information to help shape your teaching or to intervene if a student's having difficulty. Also, there are summative assessments. They can evaluate proficiency at the unit level, at the course level, or at the program level. So we have both kinds of assessments in Lurnocity. We also followed best assessment practices when we wrote these items. So Alpha Assessments, powered by Lurnocity, offers long-range planning to cover reading, literature, math, and science content in an appropriate way for grade level and readability. We also have very clear items closely aligned to Alpha's program. We have what we consider to be a suitable range of DOKs. And we have a purposeful reduction of reading and spelling barriers in order for students to demonstrate mastery of the content rather than get an answer wrong because it's misspelled. And so we've taken great steps to offer lots of drop-down menus and other things that you'll see that will help students get the right answer based on their content knowledge and not miss the question because of their spelling mistakes. Also, we have ongoing long-term use of assessments to monitor student progress and encourage continuous improvements. So based on how you set up your classroom and how you assign these activities and assessments, you can use that in a longitudinal way to study your class and your students and how they're performing. So how will you as teachers use this? They're more than just tests and quizzes. And this is a very important part of why we chose to partner with Lurnocity, because teachers might use activities to review for a chapter test or a unit test. You might use them to practice and review for standardized tests. We also have the beginning of year and end of year tests. You might decide that you want to review prior content. And also you can differentiate for struggling students. So you can offer students more practice by assigning them something available earlier in the program. There are some great features of Alpha Assessments powered by Lurnocity. The activities will rescale on devices of different screen sizes. So if your students are testing on desktop or laptop or tablet, the items will resize. So there's no problem there having students assess or complete activities on a different size screen. Also, the questions are engaging and interesting and interactive. We have a number of different technology types that we've used, and we'll go through that list and some samples in a little bit. And you will love the graphing tools. Teachers love the coordinate graphs, the line graphs, the statistical graphs. Your students will love the art pieces and the interactivity, and it won't seem like so much of a test to them. And you have flexibility in assigning different activities for different students or class needs. So what kind of items do we have? Well, Lurnocity has quite a few more item types than what we chose to do in our initial launch, but these are the ones that we are going to feature today, and I'm going to show you in the demonstration. We have multiple choice and multiple select. We have drag and drop items. We also have drop down items, and again, those are primarily for having students choose the correct content without having to miss an item for misspelling. We also have image background items, and that's where students can drag things onto an image, can type things onto an image, so much more interactive there. We have several classify, match, and ordering types that we've used, and many of the graphing tools, including the statistical plots, histograms, line plots, And many of these things are unique to math, but we do have some of these in science, but many of the math tools, they're pretty amazing. We also have essay items, and we have some passages for those of you who are for reading and literature. So let's look at some samples, and then we'll get into the demonstration. So these are some samples across our program of what the tool looks like and what the student experience looks like. And this is just one of our, I've just chosen some different samples from across the program so that you can see the kind of variety that we have. This is from our Math Grade 8, Chapter 10, and this is a multiple choice item. So you can see students can choose which graph correctly displays the data, and they can choose from between these graphs, pie graphs or bar graphs. So that's a multiple choice item, just like any multiple choice that you would find in assessments. Lurnocity has what's called choice matrix items, and those are items that are set up with a matrix of questions to ask. The reason why we use these, they can be true, false, yes, no type of items, anything categorical. But the reason we use these is because we want to check the student understanding on a series of questions related to the same concept. So these can get to a higher level DOK, a little bit more difficult question, or something a little more involved than them just answering one single true-false question related to a graph. So they have to determine, in this case, if each statement is true or false and click the appropriate place. And the matrix just is how it's displayed. We also have two different types of essay questions. An essay can be anything from long to short answer. This is a read the excerpt and answer the question from one of our literature courses. And there's excerpts from the stories. And so those two selections are featured, and then students are supposed to write what do both of these narrators do that allows them to move from negative to positive moods, explain your reasoning in 1 or 2 sentences, and then there's a place where students can type in their answers. And there's these are all teacher scored items, and so teachers can read and look against what we consider to be maybe an exemplar answer, and then score the students appropriately. So most of our items are just plain text. They're just students typing into the box. Some of them are a rich text option that gives the students a few more tools to use. So they can do indentations and bullets and bold and italics and underline. And in those cases, those are primarily used in higher level literature if you want them to write a much more longer explanation of what they've understood. So we have sample answers for all of our essay with rich text or short answer items, and those are available in the teacher scoring section of Lurnocity. We have chart items. This one's a little bit difficult to see just because of the yellow on white, but this is a question that asks, the data shows the number of items received in the mail by residents in an apartment building. And so there's a list of data, and then we're supposed to complete the histogram to show the data, drag the bars up or down to show the frequency. So these yellow bars, this actually is the answer highlighted, but students would go down here to the bottom where it says the category 1 to 2 and drag this up, and the category 3 to 4, drag this up. And we have one of these to show in the demo today. The number line drag and drops and the number line plots are pretty amazing. As a math teacher, you'll be excited to be able to test your students by having them manipulate a digital graph. And so for this first item here, we have solve the inequality, and they're typing in an answer. Graph the solution set, a very typical thing that we do in mathematics, solve and graph, solve and graph. And so in this case, students can choose a point, They can choose a segment, they can choose open-ended or completely open on both ends, arrows, all kinds of options that they can drag to the number line to build their solution. And we'll show one of those in the demo as well. The second example that I have here is another example where students fill in answers. So they're finding first the absolute value inequality, then they're typing in the solution, and then they're graphing the solution set. So we do have a lot of items that are higher DOK like this, where students are doing multiple tasks in the assessment. This is an example of the coordinate graphing. There are options to do quadrant 1, and there are options to do 4-quadrant graphing. We can change the lines, we can change the scale. There are lots of different ways that you'll see these displayed. But this item is, again, from 8th grade math, which is our Algebra 1 program. And this has 2 equations to graph to help you decide the solution set. And so then students can graph on the left and then move over to the right to answer a series of questions where they can move these draggers into the appropriate box to answer questions. We also have some graphing types that are more like pictograms or pictographs from the elementary program, where there's a table of values and then students have to use the key. So this book icon is the same or represents 2 books, and then they can go down here and move a book or a half a book to the proper row to determine their final graph. The best thing about this item type is that these draggers are what's called refillable. So the students can just keep dragging more and more and more and more until they're finished. So those are called refillable draggers. And then the answer would look something like this on the teacher side, where it shows you for this first line, how many should be there, second line, fiction, how many should be there, and so on. So there are teacher answers for all of these items. Closed text is Lurnocity's name for fill in the blank. And so if you go to Lurnocity's site to learn more about their program, you'll see closed text a lot. And that's the reason why we're going through some of the vocabulary. Everything on Lurnocity's promotional site is free to look at, free to demo, free to play with. So you might want to go there and get familiar with particular items. But closed text is what Lurnocity calls fill in the blank, and the items are set up with response boxes. So this first one for math is find the difference using place value, and students are going to input their answer into 3 boxes. Or they're going to measure to the nearest 1/4 inch, and they're going to add their answer here as well. So for all grade levels, we have closed text items, not for reading, but for math and science. We also have some items that are drawing, very few, but we have some. This item has, Ira draws this composite shape in art class out of a triangle and a trapezoid, draw the lines to show the shapes. So the students can go up here to the line and drag that to the diagram and draw a line. We have drop-down menus, and again, these are primarily used for vocabulary words that might be challenging for students to type and spell correctly. So this is one that has an image in the background. If you're not familiar with this, this is from our grade 8, chapter 6 science program. This is a genetic pedigree chart. And so students are supposed to choose from the drop-down menus, whether they're male, female, carrier, or affected. And so the answer, when you look at this teacher page, has carrier female, carrier male, unaffected, affected, affected. And so these are all part of the drop-down menus that students can choose. So it's a great interactive way to assess whether or not students understand how the male and female are shown in the graph, how the colors are used to show carrier or affected. And so we've used that graph behind it to build a much more rich assessment than just a multiple choice question about carriers or affected. We have lots of different classification items. Students can move or drag the choices into categories in order to classify. So anytime you see these 4 dots, those are draggers that go into these at the bottom buckets. So students are going to drag these 4 diagrams of waves into the buckets. So either they're going to drag it into a wave of lower frequency or a wave with higher frequency. We also have matching, and the matching items are one-to-one correspondence. So there'll be 5 places and there'll be 5 choices. And so here students are identifying each global GIS data layer, and they're dragging those maps into particular places to represent fire, snow cover, vegetation, total rainfall, and sea surface temperature. So students are able to very clearly look at these maps and say, I know which one this one is, and move them into the appropriate spot. And if they make a mistake, it's really easy. They can drag another one into that same spot and it'll replace it and put it back in the list for them to use again. We have a number of different drag and drop items in addition to the one that I just showed you there with the maps. This one is from our Science Grade 7 program, labeling images. It's a very common assessment practice to have students label images. And so you can drag these 3 identifiers here into the 3 buckets that show which part of the image they describe. This is the final one that I'm going to show you here as a static item. You can drag the correct label to each joint, and the labels can be used more than once. And so again, this is a little bit higher DOK because the students have to identify if the joint moves in all directions or just forward and backward, and they're dragging these 2 statements into all of these different locations to identify what happens at the shoulder or the elbow or the wrist. So this is a really interactive way to assess what students have learned, and they hardly think it's a test, right? Isn't that our goal? All right. So let's talk about our program just for a few minutes before we do the demonstration. Middle school math, we have converted our multiple choice quizzes. So if you're familiar with our program, we have an on-level practice book that does have some multiple choice quizzes in the back. And so we've converted those to Lurnocity format. So you can assign them on paper, you can assign them on eAlpha, or you can assign them in the Learnosity Assessment platform. Also, we have new item types that match our Alpha Math program. They're Common Core aligned. And so we wrote lesson quizzes, mid-chapter quizzes, chapter tests, and then beginning and end of year tests. So those are available now for our middle school math program, and those are all new items. We also have for our middle school science program new items that match our Alpha Science program, NGSS aligned, lesson quizzes, chapter tests, beginning of year tests, and end of year tests that all are brand new that match our Alpha Science middle school program. For elementary, what we've done in order to get items to you for assessments is we have converted lots of different item types from our print books for you to use either for assessment or activities or practice for your students. So our reading 1 through 5 program and our literature 6 through 12 program, we have print assessments that are Word documents that are on eAlpha. We have converted all of those to our Alpha assessment platform. For math grades 1 to 5 and science grades 1 to 5, we've converted our assessment books, we've converted some parts of our student book, and we've we've really made an attempt to convert the practice book and give you lots of options in elementary math and science for how you might want to use these assessments. I'll show you the list and how to find that when we log on to eAlpha. But first I want to show you that there are some things that you can look for on Lurnocity's site that there's no login required, and I have the URLs here, but again, you can get this from the recording later. But there's an author guide at Lurnosity. You can see all the different item types, how they function. Also, if you're planning on writing your own assessments at some point in the future, when we roll out our next phase of authoring, teacher authoring, you might want to be familiar with all the different item types that you could write for your own students. They also have a demonstration there, no login required, for Lurnocity. So there are a couple of the extra resources for you. For technical support, we have an email specifically set up for assessment tech support, and that is support@alphapublishing.com. And there you can reach out with any of your technology questions. If your logins aren't working properly, if something happens and you aren't able to see what you think you should see, they're a great resource to ask for tech support. And two other things to know: the calculator feature for students has been disabled, and the keyboards are enabled if students need to input an answer, but the calculator feature is disabled, and students cannot print any reports. Teachers can print reports if you would like, but students cannot. And that, of course, if you're a classroom teacher, you know you don't want your students to be able to print reports and pass them around, right? So we're going to do a demonstration, and then as we have time, you can stay and you can try your own demonstration with your own login. So I'm going to log in as a teacher and find and assign a test. Then I'm going to log in as a student and I'm going to take the test and submit it. And then I'm going to log back in as the teacher to see the teacher report. So I'm going to pause the screen for just a minute and log into our eAlpha platform. All right, so I'm logged in as a teacher, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to the assessment tab and show you what the assessment tab looks like. So we're going to go to the first one here, Assign Assessments. And when you open this up, you have lots of different options. So let's look around in here for a minute. The first one is to choose your content area, and these will be for you set according to your level of e-access for your class and your students. So you might not see all the same things here that I see. You might have a different list entirely. So let's look at each one of these so you can see what kind of options there are. For math, first I want to show you how the assessments are listed on the platform. Because in order to assign them to students, way over here on the right, you need to find the one you're looking for. So you can see here first, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. You can see first we have the demo for today, and that'll remain there for a little while after today's broadcast if you want to go in and try that. And then we have, or normally that won't be there when you log in. We start with the beginning of year test. AB means assessment book. So anything from our assessment book is going to show up first in the AB list. So you'll see here we have things for chapters 1 through 10. I'm going to scroll here, sorry for the scroll. Then we have practice book. Remember what I said about math is that we digitized and pulled into our eAlpha platform those multiple choice quizzes that are in the on-level practice book. So you can see there are a set of those here. And then if you scroll down further, you'll see the student book pieces that we converted. The reason why we converted some student book pieces is because we want you as teachers to have your students experience Lurnocity and have them practice a little bit with it before you give them an assessment with it. So the natural thing to do was to digitize the checkpoint, the reflection check, the finish line, and the chapter test, so that you could assign those as activities, or you could assign that as a test as well. But there are some options there for you. So that's the way they're organized for math. And let's go back up and look at how they're organized for science and for reading. So if we choose, I think I have to go back here to this. I'll go back to assign. And I'm going to choose this time science. And if you see what's in the list for science, you can see again, we have AB for assessment book. And I'm going to scroll for a minute. When you get down here towards the end, we have SB for the student books. So we have digitized in elementary science from the student books, the lesson reviews and the chapter reviews. Also, we have from the student book, the unit tests, and those show up alphabetically at the bottom of the list. So don't miss those, they're in there. And then let me show you what we have for reading. So back here at Assign Assessments, I'm going to choose Reading. And if we were at a higher grade, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, we would see Literature in that list. But I'm logged in as a grade 5 teacher, so I'm only seeing Reading. We can search for the unit quizzes and the tests, and these are identified by the paired selections. So the 2 selections are listed here. We thought that might make it easier for you as a teacher to find what it is you wanted to assess, rather than calling them quiz 1, 2, and 3, and then you have to try to figure out which one is which. So we put the titles in there to help you. So let's go to the demo so you can see how this works. I'm going to go back to where that demo test was. And right now, if you're going to try this later, you're going to go to Alpha Math Grade 5 with your login, or you're going to use your particular login that shows you the demo for teacher training. So what I'm going to do is there are 2 things you can do here. You can view it. You can see that this is a hot link. You can view it, or you can assign it. So let's go to the view first. If you open up and look at it, what you'll see is all the different items. You see this? This is your teacher view of what's on the test and what are the correct answers. But what we want to do is assign this to our students. And so we want to go, I'm going to go take the test myself. So first I'm going to go back to Assign. And I'm going to select Math. And instead of clicking on it to look on it, I'm going to go over here, just like in every place else on eAlpha, to the Assign location. And I have choices here to make. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose whether I'm going to assign this to a class or to a student. Well, for today's purposes, I'm going to assign it to a student. And from this class, I'm going to choose which student. And so I'm going to choose, let's see, this one right here, student 1. And I'm going to assign that test. In order to do that, if you go too soon to this button, it will remind you, select the start date. And you also have to select the end date. So here I'm going to select it to start today and end tomorrow. And I'm going to assign it to that first student that I have checked in the list. And you can pick and choose however many students you want to assign it to of your particular class, or you can assign it to the entire class. So once I hit assign, it says this is already assigned to a student because I tested it earlier. So we know it's there. We can actually go to this list here to see that the assignment is listed here as assigned, start, due, show details, or remove. So you have some options there as a teacher. And again, this is the view. You can just click on that to view it. So I'm going to log out as a teacher, and I'm going to come back in as a student, and we'll do the test. So give me a second here to find the right login. I think it's this one. And as a student now, you can see in the upper corner, the upper right corner, I'm logged in now as a student, not as a teacher. So I'm going to go to the assessment tab, and it shows me that I have 4 assessments to take. Now I only assigned one of those today, but we've been testing and messing around with it, trying to make sure it's working properly. And so there are more than that there to take. And once you assign and practice, you'll see that as well. So this is the one that hasn't been taken yet. Do you see that in blue? And the others are black because the date has passed. And you can see where it's all been assigned here. So if I want to take this assessment, I just click on the name, and then I'm going to go through item by item. Wait for it to load. Okay, we're going to start the activity. So if you look at item 1, use the tally chart to make a bar graph. We talked about this during the earlier part of the presentation. Students are going to go down here to where the categories are, and they're going to drag. So for comedy, we're going to drag to 4 to match the tally. For action, we're going to drag to 6. For musical, we're going to drag to 2. And animation, we're going to drag to 5. And then if you're done with that item, make sure you keep scrolling because there are questions to ask. So which movie had the fewest votes? Again, we've used drop-down lists if there are words that we don't want students to miss it because they misspell. So musical has the fewest votes. Which type of movie is more popular than animation? That would be action. How many people chose comedy? Maybe we could purposefully get this one wrong. We could say 2. And so you can see what happens there. And how many people chose action or musicals? Well, we're going to have to look at action and musicals. So we have 6 and we have 5. So how many people chose action or musicals? Let's do another wrong answer there just to see what happens. So when we finish that item, we go to the next item. So here is one where we have put drop downs inside of a table. So choose the correct answer from the drop down menus. So students are converting between liters and milliliters and from milliliters to liters. So here we have 0.04 liters is 40 milliliters. 830 milliliters is 0.83 liters. And so we can fill these out. And we'll go to the next item. You notice over here it grays out as the students complete an item. So they'll be able to see if they skipped one. And also when they submit, I'll show you, it'll prompt at the end to make sure that you've done all the items. There's also here a blue bar that's kind of a progress bar. They'll be finished once they get all the way to the end of it. So there's a couple of different countdowns. You can either get to 13 items here, or you can see the blue progress bar at the top. So here, this is a drag and drop. We're going to move the correct answer to the correct spot on the graph. Plot each point on the coordinate plane. So the 0.24, the 0.42, maybe we'll do one wrong, put it way over here, just so you can see some of the teacher scoring. Choose true or false. Parallelograms are quadrilaterals. Squares are rhombuses, but not rectangles is false. Rectangles are not parallelograms. So you can go through here and choose answers. Find the volume of the prism. So that's length times width times height. So 12 times 5 times 2. And you can type in here 120, or you can choose it from the keyboard. So this is what I meant when I said that the keyboards have been enabled, but the calculators have been disabled. So students still have access to the keyboards. This is one of the coolest things on Lurnocity's site, in my opinion, is graphing the inequality, because you have the ability to choose these different types of options in order for students to graph x is greater than or equal to -5. So greater than or equal to is a closed dot, and you can drag that over here to -5. Oh, that went the wrong way. That's less than or equal to. So we want to stop that. Well, we'll just leave it wrong and see what happens when we score it. Which sentence shows the correct comma placement? No comma. I do not have map pencils. So we've got a variety of tests in here in the demo. Obviously, your students would be testing whatever it was that you had been teaching in class, but this just gives you a variety of types and a variety of content areas. So this is the design process. So students are supposed to drag the correct steps to the correct location. So before they do research, they're going to identify a problem, and then they're going to do research, develop possible solutions. Then they're going to build and test the prototype, communicate the results, and evaluate and redesign. So that's part of the design process for science or for engineering. Match the object to the state of matter. So gas is the balloon. Solid is the block of wood. Liquid is what's in the container, water, or whatever's in the container. Sort to whether or not these are tools to observe, tools to measure. So microscopes observe, balances measure, graduated cylinders measure, magnifying glass you observe with, telescope you observe with, thermometer you measure. So we've just pulled things into buckets. So that's a typical drag and drop. I'm going to skip 12 just so that you see what happens when I skip it. Do you see how it shows the student more answers are required? Cancel to go back and answer the question. So you can either continue on and do the next question and come back, or you can cancel and you can say, oh, I did miss this one. So here, what we're going to do is move things into this Venn diagram that represents these shapes. So shape number, I'm just going to fill these in. Shape number A, B, no, these are ones that go here. D, so you see how students can drag these around, and if they miss one or they put it in the wrong place, they can move it. So a lot of different options there. I'm just randomly putting these in instead of taking time to answer. And then the last item, what does the prefix for in the word forecast mean? So now we're at the point where you can see the blue line is all the way across, students are finished. The gray line is all the way down, students have completed every item. If there's one they missed, they can go back and do that. They just click on it over here and do that. But we're ready to review. So the review shows you, again, for students, fully attempted. So they can see that they've done all of these items and they're ready to finish. So they're going to finish. And then, do you want to submit? Yes. So it says the activity is successfully submitted. You want to make sure that students see that screen so that it shows up on your teacher side. If for some reason you don't see it right away on the teacher side, you might need to log out and log back in order to see it. So I'm going to go back to log in as the teacher again. And this is what you're going to do in a few minutes. We're going to do that gradual release model where I do and then you do. So I'm going to log back in as the teacher. And I'm going to go here to assessment reports. And right here where it says demo for teacher training, I can get the report. And sometimes it takes a minute to load. So be patient. This is one that I did earlier, just as a practice run. So this isn't the one that I just did. So let me go back and check on, I might need to log back in again. Right. Yeah, everything looks okay there. All right, let me log out and log back in and see if that fixes it. All right, let's go to view report. It's still showing just that one student. All right, well, we'll use this, we'll look at this one so that you can see what the teacher report looks like. There should be a second student here, and there probably will be eventually, just a matter of log out and log back in. So here we have the student that I signed in on earlier today who got an 8%, only attempted these 4 items, got 3 of them wrong, got 1 of them right, and these were unattempted. So you can see the color coding. Red tells you it's wrong, green tells you it's right, and these tell you that it was not attempted. And it also tells you how long they spent on it. You can tell that I just skipped right through these just to see if it was functioning properly. So for detailed reports, you can see here what the scores were for each item. And you can also open these up and look. So if you want to look at the first item, it'll tell you what the student missed or got correct. So in this case, they got 0 points. There was an error here. Remember, we dragged one of those to the wrong place. We can go back and look at another report by clicking all. And we can look at this one. Did we miss something there? Maybe we did. So we can click our way through and see, oh, students got this one right. So you can see there's a check mark there and it's right. So you can work your way through each of these items for each student, or you can see the full class report. If more than one student took the test, you'll see multiple students listed. Thank you all for attending today. This has been great. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you're excited. 18,000 plus new items that align to our program. We're glad you joined us today. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Thank you. And thank you all for joining. As I say, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop us an email. Thank you.